Thanksgiving was never about gratitude in our family. It was about hierarchy. Who sat closest to mom? Who dad listened to the longest? Who got praised for showing up and who got questioned for being late? Growing up, I learned where I stood by watching where everyone else sat. And my sister, Claire, always sat at the center, confident, certain she belonged there. She was 2 years older than me and seemed born knowing how to win people over. Teachers loved her. Neighbors bragged about her. My parents spoke about her accomplishments like they were family achievements. I wasn't ignored exactly. I was just secondary, the quiet one, the dependable one. The one who didn't need as much. By adulthood, those roles felt permanent. Claire stayed close. Married young? Bought a house 15 minutes from my parents' place? Sunday dinners, quick visits. Constant involvement. I moved away after college, chasing a job opportunity that actually felt like mine. I came home for holidays when I could. But each year, it felt less like home and more like a place I used to belong. So, when the Thanksgiving invitation arrived, I almost ignored it. It came as a group text 3 weeks before the holiday. Mom, Thanksgiving at our house this year, we have a big announcement. 3 exclamation points. That alone made my stomach tighten. Claire, so excited. Dad, dinner at 4? Please be on time. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I'd skipped the last 2 Thanksgivings with polite excuses work deadlines. Long drives, bad timing. No one had pushed back very hard. But this time felt different. A big announcement wasn't something you missed without consequences. And some instinct quiet, but firm told me that if I didn't go, I'd regret it. So I typed back, me, I'll be there. Claire reacted with a thumb, nothing else. In the days that followed, my parents called more than usual. The conversations were strange surface level, rushed, almost scripted. Are you still working at that firm? Dad asked one evening. Yes, I said. Still doing well. Good, he replied, but his voice sounded distracted, like he was checking a box. Mom called 2 nights later. Make sure you dress nice. Your aunt and uncle are coming. I always dress nice, I said, trying to joke. She didn't laugh. By the time Thanksgiving morning arrived, I already felt like I was walking into something I didn't fully understand. The drive back was familiar. Same roads. Same gas station at the corner. Same quiet, not forming in my chest as my parents' house came into view. The white siding looked freshly cleaned. The oak tree in the front yard still stood tall, stubbornly unchanged. This was the house we grew up in. The house that held every memory, good, bad, and unspoken. I parked behind Claire's SUV. Of course, she was already there. Inside, the house buzzed with noise and smells turkey roasting. Dishes clinking, overlapping conversations. Claire's laugh carried through the living room like it always had. Confident and loud. When Mom saw me, she pulled me into a quick hug. You made it, she said, already scanning past me. Did you drive straight through? Yeah, I replied. Traffic wasn't too bad. That's good, she said absently, already turning away. Claire stood near the fireplace with her husband, holding a glass of wine like it belonged there. She looked perfect hairstyled, outfit carefully chosen, expression relaxed. When she noticed me, her smile widened just enough to feel rehearsed. You actually came, she said. I said I would, I answered. She laughed lightly, like that was funny. Relatives trickled in. Hugs were exchanged. Compliments given. Claire received the longest ones. I answered the same questions on repeat housework. How's the apartment? Am I seeing anyone? No, I said for the 3rd time. Still single? Oh, my aunt replied sympathetically. Well, there's still time. Dinner was announced at exactly 4. Dad insisted on it, like always. We gathered around the long dining table that only came out for holidays. Claire sat between Mom and Dad. I took a seat near the end. Unnoticed and plates were filled. Glasses raised. To family, Dad said. To family, everyone echoed. I watched my parents closely. Mom looked excited, almost giddy. Dad looked tense. His shoulders were stiff. His smile barely existed. He avoided my eyes completely. Claire tapped her fork against her glass. I guess now's the moment, she said brightly. The table quieted immediately. As you all know, she continued, Mom and Dad have been thinking a lot about the future. About what comes next. She paused, letting the anticipation build. and they've made a decision. My chest tightened. Not because I didn't know what was coming, but because I suddenly understood why I'd been invited. They're signing the house over to me, Claire said, smiling. They wanted to stay in the family, and since I live close by, it just makes sense. For a split second, there was silence. Then applause. Actual applause? Oh, that's wonderful. Someone said, "So smart," another voice added. Claire beamed. She glanced down the table at me like she'd just remembered I existed. "And I guess that means," she added lightly, "there's nothing left to split." A few awkward laughs followed. I didn't react. I didn't argue. I didn't even feel shocked. I felt calm. Because this wasn't a betrayal. It was a confirmation. I looked at my parents. Mom smiled proudly. Dad stared at his plate. I lifted my glass slowly, meeting my father's eyes for the first time that day. "Dad," I said gently, my voice steady, "should I tell them? Or will you?" His fork slipped from his hand and clattered against the plate. The sound was sharp, final. And in that moment, I knew. Thanksgiving was no longer about the house. It was about the truth they never expected me to bring to the table. The sound of my father's fork hitting the plate didn't echo, but it might as well have. The room froze in a way I'd never felt before. Not awkward silence. Not confusion. Fear. Claire laughed first. A short, sharp laugh meant to break the tension. "Dad," she said. "You good?" He didn't answer. Mom reached for him, her smile wobbling. "Honey?" Dad's eyes finally lifted. They landed on me for half a second, just long enough. For me to see it, panic, raw and unmistakable. Then he looked away again. Like a man hoping the ground would open up beneath his chair. I stayed quiet. That seemed to bother Claire more than anything. "What was that?" she asked, turning fully toward me now. "What are you implying?" I shrugged lightly. "Nothing. I just thought the timing was interesting." "The timing of what?" she snapped. Dad cleared his throat. "Let's eat," he said too quickly. "Food's getting cold." No one moved. My aunt leaned forward. "Eat? After that?" She laughed nervously. "I think we're all a little curious." Curious. That was the word people used when they sensed drama but didn't want to admit it. Claire shot her a look, then turned back to me. "You always do this," she said. "You wait until a big moment and then say something vague so everyone looks at you." "I didn't ask for attention," I replied calmly. I asked Dad a question. Dad stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. "I need some air," he muttered. And then he walked out the back door. The silence he left behind was worse. Mom stared after him, stunned. Since when does he need air during dinner? Claire's face flushed. "Okay," she said tightly. "Someone explain what's happening." Now, I folded my napkin and set it beside my plate. Small movements, controlled. I could feel every eye on me. "I thought you all knew," I said. "That's all." "You know what?" Uncle Mark asked. Claire slammed her palm lightly on the table. "Stop dancing around it." I turned to Mom. "You remember Grandma's trust, right?" Her expression changed instantly. Not confusion, recognition. "That's ancient history," she said quickly. "It has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this," I replied. Claire looked between us. "What trust?" Mom hesitated. That hesitation said more than words ever could. Dad came back inside, then pale, jaw clenched. Like he'd aged 5 years in 2 minutes. He didn't sit down. "Tell her," Mom whispered urgently. "Tell her she's misunderstanding." Dad swallowed. "It's complicated." Claire laughed again, but her voice was shaking now. "No, it's not. You're signing the house to me." "You said so." Dad rubbed his forehead. "We said we'd handle it?" My cousin muttered. "That's not reassuring." Mom shot him a warning look. I leaned forward slightly. "Grandma didn't leave the house to Mom and Dad outright," I said. "She put it in a trust. With conditions." The room felt smaller, tighter. "What conditions?" Claire demanded. "That it be shared equally between her grandchildren," I said. Eventually, Claire stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "That's not true." Dad closed his eyes. Mom shook her head. "She didn't mean it like that." "It's written very clearly," I replied. Claire turned to Dad. "You told me this was settled?" "I told you we'd take care of it," he said quietly. Her voice rose. By giving it to me? Mom stepped in. Claire, honey, you live nearby. You've helped us so much. We just thought, you thought you could ignore the trust? I finished. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We thought we had time. Claire let out a harsh laugh. This is ridiculous. You can't seriously be taking her side. I'm not taking sides, I said. I'm stating facts. She pointed at me. You left. You chose your life somewhere else. You don't get to come back and claim things now. I didn't claim anything, I said evenly. You announced it was yours. That's because it is, she shouted. Dad finally spoke up, his voice low and tired. It's not that simple. Claire turned to him slowly. What did you do? He didn't answer. I stood. I didn't come here to fight, I said. And I didn't come here to take anything from anyone. I came because I knew this conversation was coming, and I didn't want it happening without me. Claire crossed her arms. So, this is about control. No, I said. This is about honesty. I reached into my bag. Dad's shoulders stiffened when he saw the folder. I placed it on the table. This is a copy of the trust amendment Grandma filed 6 months before she passed. I said, I didn't even know it existed until her lawyer contacted me last year. Mom gasped. He contacted you? Yes, I said, because he had to. Claire lunged forward and grabbed the folder. She flipped through the pages frantically, her confidence draining with every line. This doesn't mean anything, she said weakly. They can still sign it over. They can't, I replied. Not without my consent. Her head snapped up. You wouldn't dare. I already didn't, I said quietly. The room went completely still. Claire turned to my parents. You knew about this? Mom started crying. Dad sat down heavily. We were trying to fix it, Mom whispered. Claire laughed a broken sound. So, you invited everyone here to celebrate something that wasn't even true? No one answered. So, this isn't just about ownership, she said. This is about liability. Yes, I replied. It is. She turned on my parents. You told me everything was settled? You told me I was safe. Mom reached for her. Claire pulled away. You put me in the middle of this, Claire said, her voice cracking. You let me announce something that wasn't even legally possible. Dad's voice was hoarse. We thought we could fix it before it mattered. I spoke softly, but firmly. It mattered the moment you chose to hide it. The relatives began shifting uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact. Others watched openly now, no longer pretending this was just awkward dinner conversation. This is insane, Claire said, pacing. So, what do you get half the house? I shook my head. No. She stopped. What? I don't want half the house. That caught everyone off guard. Mom looked at me in disbelief. You don't... No, I said. I never did. Claire blinked. Then what do you want? The question hung there, heavy. I want the truth, I said. I want accountability, and I want this family to stop deciding my place in it without me. Claire scoffed. That's not how families work. Maybe not in this one, I replied. Dad sank back into his chair. What happens now? He asked quietly. I looked at him. That depends on what you're willing to admit. Mom's eyes widened. Admit what? That you tried to bypass Grandma's wishes? I said. That you misled Claire? That you assumed I'd stay quiet? Silence. Claire let out a shaky breath. So, what you're threatening us? I shook my head. No. I'm giving you a choice. Dad looked up. What choice? We can resolve this openly, I said. With lawyers involved, everything transparent. Or we can keep pretending and let it blow up later. When the consequences are worse? Claire stared at me, searching my face for sarcasm, cruelty, anything. She didn't find it. You planned this, she said slowly. You didn't come here unprepared. No, I admitted. I didn't. She laughed. A hollow sound. So you've been waiting. I've been protecting myself, I replied. There's a difference. Mom sat down heavily. I never thought you'd do this, she whispered. I softened my tone. You never thought I'd stand up? That hurt her more than any accusation. The clock kept ticking. Outside, the sun was beginning to dip, light fading through the windows. Thanksgiving dinner sat untouched, cooling on the table, forgotten. Claire finally spoke again, her voice low. If you don't want the house, what are you really after? I looked at my sister, who'd always been sure of her place. Now, unsure of the ground beneath her feet. I'm after fairness, I said, and I'm after the part of this story you still haven't told. Dad stiffened. What part? Claire asked. I turned to him. The part about why Grandma changed the trust in the first place? The room went deadly quiet. She looked at me again, eyes burning. You planned this. I shook my head. You did. I just refused to stay silent. The house felt different now. Not warm, not familiar, exposed. And as Claire stood there angry, humiliated, desperate, I realized something important. This wasn't about the house anymore. It was about what else they'd hidden. And I was done pretending I didn't see it. The room stayed frozen long after my words landed. No one reached for their food. No one spoke. Even the clock on the wall felt louder than usual. Each tick marking the distance between what we'd believed and what was now undeniable. Claire was the first to move. She pushed the folder back across the table like it had burned her. This doesn't change anything, she said, but the confidence was gone. Her voice sounded thin, stretched too tight. People contest trusts all the time. Dad flinched. Mom wiped her eyes with her napkin, careful not to smudge her makeup. Contest it. How? Uncle Mark asked. She's got the paperwork. Claire shot him a look. Stay out of it. But the room had shifted. This wasn't a private family matter anymore. Everyone could feel it. Secrets don't like audiences, and this one was unraveling fast. Dad finally spoke. We didn't want it to happen like this. I turned to him. Then how did you want it to happen? He opened his mouth, closed it again. That's what I thought, I said quietly. Claire turned to Mom. You promised me, she said. You said the house was mine, that it was fair. Mom stood, her chair scraping loudly. Claire, please. We were trying to do what made sense. For who? Claire snapped. Mom's voice trembled. For all of us. I shook my head. No, you were trying to do what was easiest. That hurt her more than anger ever could. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Dad rubbed his temples. The trust was supposed to protect you both, he said. But when you moved away, we assumed you wouldn't want to deal with it. You assumed I wouldn't care, I replied. Claire laughed bitterly. You don't care. You just want to win. I met her gaze. If that were true, I wouldn't be standing here. I would have handled this quietly, legally. That landed. Dad looked up sharply. What do you mean? I said, choosing my words carefully. The lawyer didn't just send me the trust. He asked if I wanted to enforce it. Mom inhaled sharply. Enforce? Yes, I said. Because technically, some of what you've already tried to do violates its terms. Claire's face drained of color. What have they done? Dad stood again, suddenly restless. We refinanced last year. The room erupted. You what? Claire shouted. To cover medical expenses, Mom said quickly. And repairs. Using the house? Claire asked. Dad nodded. I closed my eyes briefly. That required my signature. Dad's shoulders sagged. We know. Claire looked between us, panic finally breaking through her anger. Because whatever that reason was, it was the one thing they'd all been hoping would never come out. One spoke after I said it. Not a cough. Not a chair scrape. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock. Counting down the moment they could no longer avoid. Dad looked like he'd been bracing for impact for years. Why did she change it? Claire asked again, slower this time. Why did Grandma change the trust? Mom stood up as if she needed the movement to breathe. She misunderstood things, she said quickly. She was getting older, confused. That's not true, Dad said. Every head snapped toward him. He swallowed hard. She wasn't confused. Mom stared at him. Don't. He didn't look at her. She knew exactly what she was doing. The words landed heavier than anything else that day. Claire shook her head. Then explain it. Because none of this makes sense. Dad exhaled slowly, like he was finally letting go of something he'd carried too long. Your grandmother noticed money going missing. The room tightened. What, money? Claire asked. The account she set aside for the house, he said. Maintenance? Taxes? Emergency repairs? I felt a cold calm settle over me, and some of it was used elsewhere, he admitted. Mom's face crumpled. We were struggling, she said. Medical, bills, debt. We meant to put it back. But you didn't, I said. She shook her head, tears falling freely now. Not all of it. Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. Grandma knew. Yes, Dad said. She confronted us. More than once. I closed my eyes briefly. That sounded like her? Direct. Unforgiving when it came to honesty. She didn't trust that the house would be protected after that, Dad continued. So she changed the trust, split it between you two, made sure no one could touch it without both of you knowing. Claire sank back into her chair. So this isn't about favoritism, she said. It's about control. It's about accountability, I replied. She looked at me, then not angry, not smug, just stunned. You knew this? I knew she changed the trust, I said. I didn't know every reason until now. Dad nodded. She told me to my face that if we tried to go around it, she'd make sure you both knew why. Mom covered her mouth with her hand. The room buzzed with quiet reactions, soft gasps, shifting bodies, uncomfortable awareness. The truth had weight, and it was crushing everything it touched. Claire let out a shaky laugh. So you let me believe I was being rewarded, she said to my parents, when really, Grandma was protecting the house from you. Mom sobbed openly now. We never meant for you to be hurt. Claire stood up. You never meant for her to know, she said, pointing at me. That's the difference. She turned to me, eyes red. And you let me walk into this? I met her gaze. You announced it. You didn't ask? She looked away, swallowing hard. Dad straightened in his chair, suddenly looking older than I'd ever seen him. So what happens now? He asked. What do you want? I didn't answer right away. I let the silence do its work. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. The house stays in the trust. No transfers. No refinancing. No shortcuts. Mom nodded weakly. Second, I continued, any money taken from that account gets documented fully, transparently. Dad nodded again. That's fair. And third, I said, turning to Claire, if you want to live in that house someday, we talk. As equals? She looked surprised. You'd consider that? Yes, I said, because this was never about taking from you. It was about not being erased. She sat back down slowly. The relatives began excusing themselves soon after. One by one, they slipped out with awkward hugs and murmured goodbyes, carrying the story with them, whether anyone liked it or not. By the time the house was quiet again, it was just the four of us. Dad looked at me. You could have destroyed us, he said. Legally, I still could, I replied. I chose not to. Mom wiped her face. Why? I answered honestly. Because I didn't want revenge. I wanted respect. Claire laughed softly, without humor. You got it. I stood and grabbed my coat. Are you leaving? Mom asked. Yes, I said. Dinner's cold. At the door, I paused. For what it's worth, I added, Grandma did the right thing. No one argued. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, sharp and grounding. Behind me, the house stood silent, no longer a prize, no longer a weapon. Just a place full of truth, finally aired out. I drove away lighter than I'd arrived. Not because I won, but because, for the first time, they all knew. I wasn't invisible anymore.